So, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be given the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of the Finnish presidency on the topic of clean air, which is of such key importance to the well-being of our citizens and the environment. I would like to also congratulate the European Commission and the government of Slovak Republic for putting forward such an impressive agenda and for bringing us all together. Although emissions of air pollutants have declined, almost 20% of the EU's urban population lives in areas with concentrations of air pollutants above at least one of the EU air quality standards. Exposure to fine particulate matter is responsible for around 400,000 premature deaths in Europe every year, and Central and Eastern European countries are disproportionately affected, as we have heard. The case for more action and more ambition on tackling air pollution is clear. It is supported by science, economics, and popular opinion. The current EU standards are not ambitious enough to be genuinely health science-based and do not adequately protect the citizen. This is especially true for the fine particulate matter standard. At the same time, we know that many, if not most, member states are not able to meet the current air quality standards. So what has held us back until now? While the challenge with air quality is shared, the nature of the challenges differ across member states. In Finland, air quality is generally good, and almost all EU air quality limit values are met. Nevertheless, air pollution causes 1,600 premature deaths every year, as well as other ill health, and contributes to eutrophication. Significant health benefits and savings in terms of societal cost could be made by reducing air pollution also below the current air quality thresholds. Finland benefits from being a sparsely populated country with fewer emission sources than most member states. Another factor contributing to good air quality is that most buildings in urban areas are supplied with district heating. Still, European air quality standards helped to put the spotlight on the seasonal poor air quality and local hotspots and motivated policy measures which have also proven to be effective. For example, the use of studded tires and winter sanding of roads used to cause high concentrations of PM10, particularly during the spring season. The city of Helsinki, together with the neighboring cities, have taken decisive action to tackle road dust inter alia by road maintenance, street cleaning. EU-funded LIFE project was an important part of this effort and also helped distribute information and good practice. So targets matter, and locally tailored measures can also be very effective. As particular emission sources like inland shipping, manure application, or biomass heating are more relevant for some regions than for others, it could be tempting to conclude further action should be tailored to the local conditions and taken at the local or member state level. In reality, however, especially for industrial installations and production traded on the EU market, it has proven very difficult to set more stringent norms on the basis of local air quality challenges. Leaving further air quality ambitions solely to national or subnational level also ignores the long ranges many of these pollutants travel, not to mention the principle of equal protection of citizens and the environment across the EU. We also know from the experience of many European cities that struggle with exceedances of NOx emissions that for vehicle pollution, a failure to address the emissions at EU level leaves local actors with very few and very unattractive options. The technologies for significant reductions of vehicle NOx emissions have been available for more than 15 years, and their application in new cars put on the market was in fact required by the European vehicle standard, and that was put in legislation in 2007. But as regulators, we failed to put in place the necessary controls for ensuring sufficient equipment was installed and operating in the normal use of the vehicles instead of just the laboratory test cycle. So EU product standards matter, but only if they are capturing the potential and are meaningfully enforced. Ladies and gentlemen, while the environmental challenges today are daunting, some of the measures offer significant win-win potential. One of the key priorities of the Finnish presidency of the EU has been to advance the EU's global leadership on climate action. This includes advancing the process to reach a common agreement on the main elements of the EU's long-term climate strategy before the end of the year, as requested by the European Council, that is committing to climate neutrality by 2050. The Finnish government itself has decided on an ambitious goal on climate protection, namely to be climate neutral by 2035 and climate positive soon after that. This will be achieved by accelerating emission reductions and strengthening carbon sinks in the short and long term. The good news is that a truly 1.5-degree compatible climate policy would solve much of the air pollutant emissions, especially if we assume that also international shipping and traffic are decarbonized. As a rule of thumb, reducing fossil energy consumption also reduces emissions. The faster we decarbonize, the higher the savings from avoided investments in the end-of-pipe technologies. The one important exception being replacing fossil fuels with wood combustion. Another piece of very good news, clean air news, is that the global shipping sulfur limit of 0.5% enters into force 1st of January 2020. This will contribute significantly to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions and therefore also secondary fine particulates globally and in European Union. And we can draw further inspiration from the 35 large cities from across the globe, also from Europe, that signed the C40 Clean Air Cities Declaration just recently in Copenhagen. The signatories pledge to set ambitious pollution reduction targets that meet or exceed national commitments with the aim to meeting World Health Organization guidelines. With new technologies and digital tools, we can also empower the citizen to be more aware and active in their own environment. A project in Helsinki, also partly funded through EU Urban Innovative Actions Programme, that was already mentioned by Marc Lemaitre earlier, is testing the collection of new high-resolution, hyper-local air quality data and making it available to citizens in real time, coupled with some microfinance to encourage community action and individual behavioral change. While there are sectors that merit further air quality standard setting at the EU level, like agriculture, residential and biomass combustion, and indoor air quality, and while the implementation of best available techniques in permitting has scope for improvement, in the next 5 years, the EU must find a way to tackle the systemic sustainability challenge. The systemic nature of Europe's climate and environmental challenges was also underlined by the Environment Council in its October conclusions, calling for fully seizing the opportunities for co-benefits and synergies between different environmental policies, including those addressing climate, nature and biodiversity, air quality and healthy living environment, water resources, and the circular economy. Colleagues, I think many of us share the opinion that the new Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's plans for a European Green Deal and her program in general has been a very welcome injection of energy and ambition to EU environmental policy agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for allowing me to take the podium this morning, and I'm as eager as any of you to hear the guidance of our distinguished panel on the way ahead for clean air for all Europeans.
Terry, stay where you are. One thing, just want to ask you.
Sure.
We were talking a little bit during coffee, and you know, this idea of getting the public to care about this. And one aspect is a Finn who has a sauna in the middle of nowhere. How do you persuade them to go electric?
Ooh,
How do you do that?
That's terribly difficult. I think we can erase that from the record. I think this you can't do. This you can't do. But I think what we can do is we can advise our population. Actually, that is already happening to burn the use dry woods in their saunas. And actually, there's quite some difference between sauna stoves. Some of them emit more particulate matter and some less. And
Okay.
so we could start by labeling and giving maybe some traffic signs on which ones are good. And honestly, we have to tackle these also for the fact of black carbon and
Yep.
it's air quality, it's climate, it's something we have to be.
Because on that air quality index that I saw, that map, Finland's in there with some dark colors. I saw.
Oh, I'm sure there was a wrong map.
Yeah. Right? So, okay. Anyway, we all have work to do, right? Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Teddy.
you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Time's a ticking. Let's call up our last panel, please. Our final panel on Quo Vadis. Where do we go from here? And as you've heard from Teddy, there's plenty more work to do. As they're taking their seats, can we put up those slides on the Eurobarometer? We're talking about, the vox pop on all this. How do we, and this forum is part of this, how do we help to change hearts and minds with what we're saying here over these 2 days? And how are those hearts and minds before this forum? This is a Eurobarometer index. Now, most Europeans say they lack information about clean air, about air quality. But 31% have heard of EU air quality standards. So there is an awareness. We got to build on that, obviously. Next slide. 63%, about 2/3 of Europeans say these standards are not adequate and should be strengthened. And then, of course, you had also tying that then to the climate thing where you had the European Parliament, that is the elected body of the European Union, saying that there is a climate emergency. So there is public support for more action. So, Daniel, where do we go from here? As Daniel Calleja, Director General, DG Environment, European Commission. Daniel, please.
Thank you very much. And let me start by saying how pleased I am to be here in this very important forum. And you were rightly saying, Chris, how important the air quality issues have become. It is true citizens say we lack information, but at the same time they say we are concerned. We know this is an issue. And this has not happened by chance. This is the result of the fact that increasingly citizens are concerned about their quality of life. Citizens want their cities to be clean. Citizens want sustainable transport, sustainable energy. And we have been working a lot with the cities, with the states, with the civil society to pass the message that it is not acceptable to have 400,000 premature deaths in Europe linked to air quality issues. It is not acceptable from a human perspective, but it is not acceptable neither from an economic perspective.
It is not acceptable. I think that is a hashtag #CleanAirEU. Okay. Let's tweet it. Yeah.
So the topic of this panel is, where do we go from here? What can we do? Because citizens are saying what you are doing is not enough, and they are also saying we want action. We are tired of words, we want action. What the Commission has been doing over the past 2 years is conducting a fitness check. And yesterday, we published online, yesterday night, the conclusions of this fitness check.
And it's not all great. You guys have been making progress, but there's a bit of mea culpa in here, or self-criticism.
It is light and shadows. So we have come out after these 2 years of analysis with hundreds of consultations, with several workshops, examining studies, looking at data, looking at the overall impact. Is our legislation fit to deal with this problem? We have come to 7 conclusions, which you have on the slide. The first is that increasingly air pollution is linked not only to the environment, but also to health. This is a conclusion that is obvious, but it comes very clearly from all the respondents to the consultation. The second is that in spite of the problems, yes, in Europe we are making progress. The air quality situation has improved over the past years. Not completely. We have still 130 cities which are exceeding the standards, but when you look at the situation we had in the year 2000, we have seen progress, partial progress, but progress. So we see also that our legislation, although not enough, has been delivering partial results. Third, we say, how do we deal with this problem? Are air standards the right way? The conclusion is, yes, they have been working. We need to continue the standards. It would be wrong to relax them, to show compliance, but it would be wrong to look at other objectives which are not measurable. We need to continue having EU standards, and 2 out of 3 Europeans say the EU should even do more.
Even do more. Perhaps adopt the WHO standards, as we've been talking earlier, right?
This is the third conclusion.
Yeah.
Current standards are less ambitious than scientific advice. So the issue is, should we move now to the WHO standards? This is something that the Commission is seriously considering in the framework of the Green Deal, to which I will also mention.
Because even what we saw yesterday, even those WHO standards in some ways are not even that's enough.
Exactly. And I think we need to go increasingly for science-based legislation. So if the science makes recommendations, it's very difficult for the political authorities not to consider. So we will have to discuss with the member states and with the European Parliament, what do we do about the standards, and should we align the standards with the WHO recommended values?
Right.
Then we think that limit values are more effective than other type of standards. We need to be concrete. We need to have limits. We need to see if there are exceedances to monitor the situation. Legal enforcement works.
It's not just a slap on the hands. It actually works.
It works because, first of all, it has increased the awareness.
Yep.
Second, because countries are obliged to take this seriously.
France just got it from the European Court of Justice.
We
see what happens.
We have also the possibility, if countries do not comply with the judgments, to go even for fines. So this is not the only remedy. We also need to discuss financing, support, awareness, but it's an effective tool, which we will continue. Then we need to further harmonize, monitor, data, and measure, because it's very important, the monitoring, and we will have to do more. And finally, we are also coming to the conclusion that we should go more for e-reporting. We have a lot of satellite measurement, which is more effective than receiving the reports for the member states. All these issues are going to be very carefully scrutinized in the framework of the European Green Deal, which President von der Leyen has announced. Within the Green Deal, which is a comprehensive and systemic approach, and which she has announced to be presented in her first 100 days of office, one of the most important parts of the Green Deal is this zero pollution ambition. Besides the climate, besides the circular economy, it's how do we improve the situation on air, on water quality, on chemicals. Is it possible in Europe to lead the way towards this zero pollution ambition, to improve the quality of life of our citizens, and to guarantee that environment and health go together?
Okay, this all sounds great. Why don't we do this? There must be barriers. What are these barriers that are keeping us from taking action? Felipe Araujo, who is Vice Mayor of the city and City Councillor for Innovation and Environment of Porto, Portugal. You're also Chair of the Eurocities Environment Forum. What are the barriers, let's say on a local level? Let's start on a local level.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, especially in this topic that is a difficult topic. Clean air has always been a very difficult topic. When we talk about air pollution, and several times we are mentioning the number of premature deaths that causes, but usually if you talk to a citizen, he is more concerned, for example, with car accidents. He thinks people die more from car accidents than this type of things, and it's 10 times more than road accidents killing people. So this is a type of thematic that area that we are in that's not easy for sure. I think what's going on, and it's that cities have been doing a lot in this topic. They understand really that everything is connected. So when you are talking about energy, or when you are talking climate adaptation or something, and the measures that they are taking, they know that the air is a very important topic, because you will not for sure notice, it's not something visible, but for managing we understand that if you have a lot of traffic, you are causing problems there. So in the way the politician has although probably the citizens are not really aware, we know that we are causing problems to these people. So we need to address it. So in the decarbonization of the energy systems, of cleaning, with leading, I heard the mayor of Bratislava saying that we must lead by example. So cities must give the example. If we want things to change, we have to start by our own home. So cities are changing their car fleets. They are showing that it's possible to have electrical fleets, for example. They are investing in nature-based solutions, for example. There is a lot of new solutions coming out in cities, retrofitting the buses, so there is a lot going on. But of course, we are talking about a very transversal problem, a transboundary in nature. So we need the help from everyone. So it's not a matter of what the cities can do by itself. They are doing a lot. But it's a matter of working with the EU Commission, with the national governments on all these topics. You have to take care in climate, in transport, in agriculture, all sorts of pollution. So there is a lot that we need to do on that matter.
Felipe, we saw that Eurobarometer report showing strong public support for more action. How do you feel that on the city level in Porto? Do you feel that, or is there also some reluctance, or are there barriers there to changing things?
Definitely. Well, I'm working. I came from the private sector. I'm working at the public sector, let's say, for the last 6 years. What I've noticed is that 6 years ago, the awareness was completely different. So we are in a totally different time. Things have changed a lot. I would say in the last 2-3 years, they changed. The pace has increased a lot. So people are now aware that they have to do something in order to preserve their health, which is more visible than the air or something. So they are starting to understand that probably the problems that they face in their daily lives with their children, with their going to the hospital or something, are caused by these things. So the awareness, I think, is coming, and it's helping a lot. And we have seen in the European election what this was really a concern. Even in countries like Portugal, where there was there is not so much this concern in the society, it's increasing a lot. So there is awareness. So we have to take advantage of it and show people that we have a common strategy on all levels to tackle this.
What about on a national level? Gertrud Zahler, Director General, German Environment Ministry, responsible for emission control, and you dealt with the Dieselgate scandal of a few years ago. You've been with the ministry for about 25 years. You must have seen that evolution. How do you break through these barriers? And there are, of course, very strong financial interests that prevent trying to do more and faster, even though Germany has been seen as being at the forefront of a lot of the reform like this.
Yes, that's true. I believe that on an EU level we approved ambitious requirements regarding the abatement of air pollutions. But of course, requirements are the one side. On the other side, we have to take action.
Yep.
And as air pollution is a cross-cutting issue, especially sectors like agriculture, industry, energy, and so on have to take action. And that's the problem, because we have on the EU level, but of course also on a national level, very strong lobby groups. And the diesel scandal is one of the good examples how this works. We know about the problem minimum since 10 or 11 years, and we needed minimum 6 years to approve on the EU level the real driving emissions directive. So that shows us that if we want really to achieve our goals in air pollution, but also in other sectors, we must find a way to limit the lobby influence on a European and on a national level.
Well, at the Eurobarometer survey, for instance, the vote in the European Parliament, does that strengthen your hand on the national level at your ministry to be more aggressive about cutting emissions? Or are you still facing this strong resistance from
Yes,
financial interests?
Yes, we made a very interesting experience in the last months. We had this Friday for Future movement, when young people went every Friday on the streets and demonstrated for more action debating climate change. And this was the beginning of a stronger public awareness, especially, of course, on the climate issue, but I believe that will help us also to raise awareness for environmental questions as a whole. When we yes, and this movement was something like the starting point for the German government to adopt legislation regarding climate adaptation and mitigation. But my observation is that there is still a lot of reluctance, especially in the traffic sector from our Ministry for Traffic Affairs. There is reluctance in the agriculture sector and others. So we started, but we have a long way to go forward if we want to, if we really want to achieve our goals.
Okay. Could I call up, please, the State Secretary for the Agriculture Ministry of Slovakia, Gabriel Cicaj, please. Welcome. And Minister, can I speak English to you? Is that okay?
I will speak Slovak, but...
You will speak Slovak, but I will... Okay, all right. I guess maybe the same question to you about public support for doing more as we look to the future. How much is that public support from what we saw of the Eurobarometer survey showing 2/3 of Europeans want to see more done to cut emissions in the European Union? Can you comment on that? There's also this issue of trying to get different ministries. You're from the Agriculture Ministry, and you've got an Environment Ministry, you've got an Industry Ministry. How can you get all those ministries to work together and not against each other in their own silos in trying to solve this emissions problem and making cleaner air? Minister, please.
Ďakujem za otázku.
Thank you for this question. I personally think that as far as cooperation between individual ministries in Slovakia is concerned, and in the European Union as such, I don't see this as problematic. I believe that the ministries see the need to bring down the environmental burden, especially in the area of air pollution. What is, however, still problematic is to find a way how to put this into practice. When we are talking about agriculture and agricultural production, the farmers are seen as the bad boys, as the enfant terrible. As regards ammonia, I have to say it's true, more than 60% of ammonia is owing to agricultural production, is due to the agricultural production, but there are certain linkages, certain given things which cannot be sorted out overnight. On the other hand, we have the citizens of the EU to whom we promised cheap and healthy food. The number of citizens in the EU is not decreasing, on the other hand it's growing, the demands in terms of life quality and standards are growing as well, so we are consuming more. We see people switching to vegetarianism, but not that many actually, so we see that meat production still has to be secured.